I'm doing my best to protect you. But you take me for granted.
Deforestation is wiping out wildlife habitats.
You're destroying me.
Most scientists agree COVID-19 probably originated in wildlife.
And we're all paying the price.
COVID cases are rising all around the world.
Please, stop. If not for you, then for those who follow you. Protect me, and you protect yourselves.
We knew it was coming. The signs were all there. We knew we had to change, but we didn't. Destroying wild habitats, exploiting wildlife, turning a blind eye. Maybe it would go away. It didn't. It began to bite back. Primates and HIV, civets and SARS, bats and Ebola. COVID-19 is not the first pandemic, and it won't be the last. Unless we deal with the root causes. It's time to stop the wildlife trade and to support compassionate, sustainable farming to protect our planet. Let's change our relationship with nature forever. For all life on Earth.
ACTAsia is a multifaceted charity that believes in education to drive long-term sustainable change. We believe that the way to tackle issues of suffering among people, animal cruelty, and the destruction of the environment is not by firefighting the individual problems, but by changing thinking through education. ACTAsia's award-winning Caring for Life education programs offer innovative research-led platforms that are designed to create institutional change across Asia. In Chinese schools, our Caring for Life for Children education program aims to help children develop a sense of compassion and empathy for people, animals, and the environment. In educating Asian consumers, our work focuses on the exploitation of people, animals, and the environment in production methods for consumer-related items, especially of animal-based products such as meat, fur, or traditional Chinese medicine. We offer training and professional development to the most influential community members, like veterinarians, lawyers, doctors, officials, and journalists. Educating Asian professionals means they can in turn make informed decisions in their work, lead by example, and educate and positively influence others. Visit our website to learn more and support our work. Together, we can change our world for the better.
Hello, Grace. Thank you very much for everyone to join me today. Together with ACTAsia's team, I welcome you to join us to talk about today's webinar, discuss and learn about captive wildlife in entertainment. We have 8 international speakers from various organizations will be presenting their work and their experience. This webinar is co-organized by ACTAsia and the International Conservation and Biodiversity Team, ICBT, and Biodiversity Magazine, with the support of the IUCN SSC Asian Elephant Specialist Group and the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation, CBCGDF. I'm Pei Su. I'm the founder and CEO of ACTAsia. I will be the chair of today's webinar. Today with Laurent Dingley, who is the founder of International Conservation and Biodiversity Team, international advisor of the CBCGDF, and the magazine editor. Also, I am very honored to work with Heidi Riley. She is the vice chair of IUCN Species Survival Commission, Asian Elephant Specialist Group. And she will also be the moderator of the panel discussion. This webinar will be recorded, and later on we will be streamed in YouTube, and also particularly for the China audience through CBCGDF's channels throughout China. And the speaker will present their talk with us. And I would like to give this time to Heidi to share with her opening.
Thank you, Pei. I would just like to welcome all the speakers and all the attendees, and look forward to hearing a variety of presentations about captive wildlife, specifically those used in entertainment. Hearing about various initiatives helps all of us who work with wildlife to improve our management and conservation plans. So discussion is very good, and I look forward to it, and I hope you do too, and I hope that you take away some good information from this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heidi, and it's a great pleasure to be able to work with you. And the next one, Laurent, would you like to give us your opening? Laurent really is the one, the person make this webinar possible, from inviting speaker, contact and design the content as well, the whole design of the webinar. Are you with us?
Yes. Thank you, Pei. Thank you, Heidi. Welcome to everyone. I'm very pleased to have you here today to talk about the important topic of wild animals held in captivity for entertainment. I've wanted to talk about this subject for a long time. We touched on it briefly in August at our last international event on human-elephant conflict. But we felt that the subject of captivity was too important to be addressed as a side issue. Heidi rightly suggested that we narrow it down and focus on captivity for entertainment purpose. We will therefore not deal today with equally important issues such as animal testing or fur farms. Many people who visit zoos, circuses, and amusement parks are not always aware of the animal abuse involved, and in some cases with the fact that they are even indirectly complicit in torture. We therefore felt that it would be important, thanks to the explanations of the expert we have invited, to explain to the widest possible audience the concrete consequences of captivity on the physical and mental health of the animals concerned. Most of the experts present here today also have long experience of the difficulty or the impossibility of reintroducing animals held for a long time in captivity into their natural habitats, not to mention the financial and, I would say, emotional investment that this requires. Describing abuses and their consequences is certainly not enough, and on Pei Su's enlightened advice, we propose to open up perspectives as well, to propose to the public concrete ways to modify our relationship with wild animals. Finally, I would like to thank Pei and her team, as well as Heidi Reidel, for their dedication and the kind and determining help they have given me. I would like to thank all our guests, and especially Rob Laidlaw, who got involved without hesitation, even though he was notified very late. And last but not least, I would like to thank my Chinese friend from the CBCGDF. It is indeed thanks to their support that we will be able to broadcast this meeting on several Chinese platforms and thus reach a wide audience in China, which was one of the main objectives of this international event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laurent. And it's really a great pleasure to myself to be able to chair this webinar, because captive wildlife for commercial purposes is my first campaign in my 30 years of animal movement. And we've been working on captive wildlife issue for many years, particularly for ACTAsia. Fur farming for commercial purposes is particularly, close to our heart, and it's very vital issue for China as well. So, to have this webinar is really, really significant for many of the speakers or many of the audience, people in China. So without due, delayed, and I'm really honored to have our first speaker is Will Travers from Born Free Foundation. Well, he is an international renowned wildlife expert who has dedicated his life to wildlife issues. And since he's living in Kenya while with his parents, Virginia McKenna and the late Bill Travers, made the film Born Free in 1966. In 1984, he co-founded the wildlife charitable organization known as the Born Free Foundation, which worked to stop individual wild animal suffering, to protect threatened species worldwide and keep wildlife in the wild. Will has been involved in rescue elephant, tigers, lions, and dolphin. Is always willing to share his experience, knowledge to further Born Free's vision for a more compassionate future. Will is also a board member of the Born Free US and is the president of Species Survival Network, and an international coalition of more than 100 organizations committed to the promotion, enhancement, and strict enforcement of CITES. Will has participated in every CITES meeting since 1989, advised on precautionary application of convention. Will was awarded Officer of the Order of the British Empire, OBE, in June 2012 for service to conservation and animal welfare in the Queen's Birthday Honours. So he's going to talk to us today with a title called The Individual. Over to you, Will. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. First of all, just confirm that you can hear and see me.
Yes, I can.
Somebody, okay. So good day, everybody, and thank you to Pei Su, to Heidi and Laurent for their opening remarks. I'm very honored to be attending this meeting and setting the scene. I've got 10 minutes, so I'm going to have to be quite quick. So as was said just now, Born Free, the organization I co-founded with my mother, Virginia McKenna, and my late father, Bill Travers, in 1984, has always paid a great deal of attention to the individual animal, and particularly individual animals in captivity and in entertainment. It must have started when my parents were lucky enough to star in the classic wildlife film Born Free in 1966, and we lived in Kenya for a year while that was being made. It told the true story of Elsa, an orphan lion cub who was successfully returned to the wild. It was the subject of a book, and then, as I say, the subject of a film. And when my mum and dad were in Kenya all those years ago, they worked with the real George Adamson, who was the technical advisor on the film. And through him, they learned about lions, their individuality, their personalities. And after the film was made, they began to transition away from acting to include making documentary films and wildlife feature films. An example of that would be a documentary called The Lions Are Free that was made in 1967, which followed the story of 3 of the lions that were used in the Born Free movie and their reintroduction successfully to the wild by George Adamson. An example of the wildlife feature film was a film they made called An Elephant Called Slowly in 1969. And to cut a very long story short, the little elephant that's in that film was on her way from Kenya to the London Zoo. And my parents were able to intercede and have her come to be with them on the film set. They had a glorious 8 weeks on the set. And at the end of it, they said, could we please have this little elephant so that she can be returned to the wild once more with the help of Daphne Sheldrick, the late great Daphne Sheldrick, and her late husband, David. The authorities said yes, but they would have to capture another baby elephant. because they'd made a promise to London Zoo. Anyway, Poli Poli, that was her name, which means slowly in Swahili, came to the London Zoo, and my mum and dad didn't see her for 10 years because they thought it was best that she moved on from the past and lived in the present. However, news reached them that she'd become difficult to manage and that she might even face euthanasia. And so they went to see her, and after 10 years, they stretched out their hands and she came from the back of the enclosure and stretched her trunk out across the moat to touch them in a gesture of remembrance. Sadly, despite a campaign to have her taken to Africa, the zoo decided to try and move her just up the road to another zoo called Whipsnade, and the move failed. She damaged a foot, and she was euthanized in the Elephant House in 1983, aged 14. And that was the start of our charity in 1984, just a few months later. We started with £6, which then was worth $10 and is now worth $6. And since then, we've continued to focus a great deal of effort and time on individual animals. We have hundreds of lions, tigers, leopards, cheetah, and other wild animals that we've rescued over the years from dreadful roadside menageries and zoos, from private ownership, from animal circuses. And many of those animals, the big cats, now live in our spacious sanctuary enclosures in South Africa, Ethiopia, and India. We also have hundreds of primates that we've brought to our primate sanctuary in Texas in the United States, animals that have come from laboratories or have been surrendered by their private owners or have been confiscated by the authorities. We've also taken on campaigns that have an individual captive wild animal at their heart, and Pei Su mentioned dolphins. So in the 1970s, there were dozens of dolphin shows in the United Kingdom, commercially exploiting these intelligent social mammals in tiny tanks filled with chemically controlled water. By the end of the 1980s, however, there were just 4 left, and the UK government of the day decided to bring in stricter measures relating to the size and depths of the tank. The new specifications would require all the remaining dolphin area to be rebuilt at considerable cost, and so Born Free was approached to take some of the dolphins. The request was very simple. Will you take 3 of the last dolphins and release them back to the wild? We started our effort with just £500. Today, 2 years later, and more than £500,000, the 3 dolphins were successfully released into the waters of the Caribbean. And I can tell you that today, there are no more dolphins in captivity in the United Kingdom. Our focus on the plight of individual animals in captivity continues to this day. We've produced recent reports on the challenges faced by elephants in zoos, something that I think will come up more later in this webinar, highlighting issues to do with obesity, with locomotion, low breeding success, shortened longevity, psychological and behavioral problems, which have led us to the inevitable conclusion that elephants should just do not belong in zoos and that their keeping should be phased out. This conclusion is echoed by the decision of the owner of a UK zoo with the most elephants in this country, Damien Aspinall, who's planning to move his 13 elephants from England to Kenya at some point, probably this year, and rewild them. This will reduce the number of elephants in the UK to less than 40, about half the number there were just 8 years ago. We've also recently produced a report looking at the lives of giraffe in zoos. This shows that they share many of the problems faced by elephants, and again leads us to the conclusion that giraffe is not a species that benefits from being kept in zoos, and that the keeping of the species should be phased out in favor of increasing our efforts to protect and conserve giraffe in the wild right across their range. We've also recently paid a great deal of attention to the keeping of wild animals as exotic pets by private individuals. In the UK, it is possible to keep almost any species of animal as a pet, although for some species, there are extra keeping requirements, species that are deemed to be dangerous. This is leading to serious animal welfare concerns for the individual animals involved, as well as wider threats to some species which are taken from the wild. Our approach here is twofold. Firstly, to identify species which simply should not be kept as pets at all. In this instance, I think we're talking about primates, which require specialist care and are entirely unsuited to being kept in this way. And we're also promoting the idea of what's known as a positive list, something that's been developed by other countries. This identifies the small number of species that can be kept satisfactorily by private citizens. Necessarily, as I say, that list is short and it comes with very clear criteria as to what measures need to be taken to safeguard the welfare of those animals. The list would also be subject to amendment should evidence demonstrate that a species should not, in fact, be on the list. The range of ways that wild animals are exploited in captivity for entertainment is truly wide, and as wide as the human imagination is deep and sometimes troubling. Canned hunting, the shooting of wild animals for fun with no chance of escape, the use of animals in circuses, roadside menageries, zoos, as pets, the list goes on. In conclusion, my hope is that anyone watching this webinar, from whatever background, private, government, NGO, institutional, corporate, education, law enforcement, will accept my invitation to reach out and connect. The tide of history is flowing in one direction only. The more we understand about wild animals as individuals, the more we recognize them as sentient beings, the less tenable it is for us to treat them as things. And the more it will be incumbent on us, each and every one of us, to treat them with the respect and the compassion that they deserve. I will put my email address into the chat so that if you want to follow up on this at all, you can. But I hope that that's helped rather rapidly to set the scene for the wonderful speakers who will now follow, who will definitely expand on some of those issues. Again, Pei Su and your colleagues, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Will. And we can learn from your very short but very dense speech to learn about what Born Free has, worked and helps wildlife in so many years and so many countries. And I definitely feel personally very close to Born Free because I'm the finalist of your 2021 McKenna and Travers Award for Compassionate Conservation. So, you have brought, many people together for the cause, and thank you for joining us today. It's a great honor to have you. And so I think in Will's speech just now, he's talking about, these captive wildlife in these confined environments, and very often people are not aware of the issues and the psychological effects, and it has brought to them is really lead us to introduce our second speaker is Dr. Sarah Plato. She's a veterinarian, professor of animal behavior and animal welfare, and in Jianghan University in Wuhan, China. For the last 15 years, Dr. Sarah Plato has been working in the field for animal welfare and animal behavior, both in academia and in the private sector in China. Currently, Dr. Plato is a professor of animal behavior and welfare at the College of Life Science in Jianghan University and Secretary General of Biology and Science Ethics, BSE at the CBCGDF Foundation. During her career, Dr. Plato has worked as a veterinarian with different animal species, ranging from wild land mammals, marine mammals, reptile, birds in rescue center in Spain, USA, and Canada. In China, Dr. Plato has been active developing projects on animal welfare from farms, pets, and wild animals, opening courses at university level on the same subject and delivering lecture workshop to professions, college students, and general public on the management of animal under the human care. And Sarah is a very good friend of mine, and we let us hear what she is sharing with us today.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present this webinar. Thank you to Lauren Dingley. Thank you to ACTAsia and CBCGDF. Everybody knows from a scientific point of view that elephants are a highly cognitive animal species. They are able to recognize themselves at the mirror. They are able to reason, able for numeracy, and also they can feel emotion and grief. But in particular, they possess psychobiological structure like human that are very sensitive and vulnerable to stress and trauma. In fact, the impact of stress and trauma on the brain of elephant can have major detrimental effect, and in particular long-term effect on the way elephant interact with the environment, social environment and physical environment. One very important aspect of the elephant life is the mother-calf relationship that regulates the development of the cortical limbic area in the right hemisphere of the brain, which are responsible of some of the highly complex cognitive behavior of elephant and also allow the elephant to have a normal social life. But what happened that long stress in traumas cause a reduction of the right brain activation of these areas, and which can lead the individual to develop like violent behavior, lack of social awareness, which is called PTSD. PTSD is not an issue that stick with only one individual that is affected with, but actually can be transmitted across generation, socially and neurobiologically. It can have lifelong mental and physical effect. The first one to actually observe PTSD in elephant was the Dr. Bradshaw, who actually observed in young African elephant this behavior of terrifying and harassing rhinoceros in an area, and they couldn't understand why. But then they linked this behavior to the fact that this young elephant, they lost their mother because the mother was poached or or killed, and similar trend actually were observed in calf that they were separated earlier from their mother. The PTSD, for example, in wild elephant, is an expression of stress and the lack of control on the environment of these individuals. Bradshaw, with the time then, they identify two types of PTSD. One is the normal PTSD in wild elephant, which is associated to short-term traumas and stress. And then we have the complex PTSD, which is a characteristic of the captive elephant and is associated to long-term trauma, stress, and abuses. In particular, the complex PTSD, when it is found in early age, like in individuals who were, for example, separated early from the mother, and then undergo to dominate training and train and abuses. So this complex PTSD cause an underdevelopment of whose brain area that are very important for the normal social development and the cognitive ability of these animal species. The first one to actually observe a complex PTSD in human was the psychiatrist Judy Herman, and who observed this behavior, in people who were survivors from war and torture, and survivors from domestic violence. And she found, she observed these people, even though they were saved from the original environment that caused these symptoms, they kept living in this constant fear of being harmed or die. And the genesis of the complex PTSD reside in this chronic, perceived and actual life-threatening environmental stress in an atmosphere of fear, unpredictability, and lack of control over self or the environment, which often entails a state of physical and emotional captivity. So you can actually, who works with captive elephant, can relate this to the elephant. But in particular, this constant fear and in state of alert is because there is a deprivation of the agency of an individual. So the individual is unable to make life, like his or her own life impacting decision. The characteristic of the complex PTSD is like a trauma in the relation. There is a break of disruption of the social bond, multiple and prolonged. In the elephant calf, for example, when they are separated in very early age from the mother, they undergo to this dominated base training like chain, and so they develop behavior such rocking, banging the head against the wall, lashing out suddenly to their trainers, and engaging in self-injurious behavior. All behavior that actually has been also observed in humans with complex PTSD. The assessment of the complex PTSD in Asian elephant, for example, was performed by Rizzolo and Brescia for the first time. And so they used the indicator that are normally used to assess complex PTSD in human, and of course modify to adapt them to the elephant. And the method actually was proven effective because elephant and human share same complex core brain function. So from the study of Rizzolo and Brescia, it came out that 73% of the subject assessed show at least one symptom of a complex PTSD. These elephants were Asian elephant holding captivity. The prevalence was higher in individuals who were taken very early from the mother or they were wild caught. And this elephant had at least altered set capacity, mood disturbances, overestimated sense of environmental danger, so constantly looking for danger, and show avoidance and tension reduction behavior. And and some of them, they had PTSD. But in particular, the elephant who were known to have experienced developmental trauma, so since the very early age, they were the individual who exhibited the most persistent and numerous symptoms in all 5 clusters. But there is a hope even for this individual. So the complex PTSD, like diabetes, cannot be cured, but can be controlled and attenuated. So studies in human and animal individual who show complex PTSD symptoms, but put in a positive environment, so rehabilitated, they show a reduction and an attenuation of these symptoms. For the elephants, what does it mean? It means to put the elephant in an environment such as sanctuary where they can actually are free to walk around. They can decide what, where, and what, where, and when to eat, when they can decide with who they can interact and where they can interact. So to give back to this individual the ability of self-control, of controlling their behavior, and to have an agency, like self-agency. And in particular is also to restore the social bonds, so to allow this individual to reconstruct the bond that has been broken with the mother because taken away in early age, and so to develop social bond with the humans of the sanctuary and positive social bond with other individual elephants. Thank you so much. Good night.
It's great we had Sarah to show us this her talk, because in my 30 years experience, I have really explained to lots of authorities or people in Asia, animal welfare is science. And so it's not just an emotional reaction to advocate of the welfare of these wildlife or animals. And I think her speech now just explained through PTSD, how they experience and how these can be, not cured, but actually recover from that through, very major management issues. So it's great to have Sarah's input. And I would really like to let you know we have several attendees all from China, and we encourage everyone to share your questions, and we will have a panel speakers to discuss in the later stage. And so please do feel free to share your questions. And the third speaker, we're very honored to introduce her. He's Dr. Manori Gunawardene, and from Sri Lanka. She's a representative for Born Free Foundation in Sri Lanka. Manori is a wildlife scientist. Again, another scientist to join us, who started off as a researcher at the Center for Conservation Research, studying elephant ranging pattern and land use based on radio telemetry in southern Sri Lanka in 1996. She has experience in mitigation human-wildlife interaction and advocates for science-based approaches to development planning. Manori is a Eisenhower Fellow in Leadership, which was awarded in 2010, and Associate Scientist to Wildlife Protection Society India on human-animal conflict mitigation with the period of 2007 to 27 and to 2010. She's also the country representative for Born Free Foundation in the UK since 2012, and is a technical advisor to Sri Lanka delegation to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species since 2016. Manori has been serving as a member of EFL board since 2012. So without due delay, Manori, please start. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much, Pesu. What I will do is also, I would like to recap on a very interesting talk by Dr. Plato, and also on a few things that Will mentioned about the need to focus on individual welfare when we look at animals in captivity. So I will be talking about Asian elephants because that's what I've worked on the most, but keeping in mind that what we really need to do is to understand the science and the ecology of the animals we are looking at, and looking at them in the context of their lives in captivity. Share the screen. I'm hoping that you can see the screen. And it's clear. So what I'd like to talk about is our relationship with elephants in captivity. So we all know about elephants. It's an animal we're all so familiar with, yet we are so unfamiliar with their lives and daily needs. And that's fundamental when we look at care and the custody we require in terms of their care in captivity. So there's something that the speakers prior to me also did reinforce over and over again, and Dr. Plato's talk was indeed extremely enlightening, is that elephants are social animals, very much like us. They live in very complex societies. They live in family groups very much like we do. They know multiple individuals. There's a recent study that came out that actually says that elephants can recognize individuals within the elephants they associate by using scent. So we are learning new things about how elephants get to know each other or know each other even now. So the science is still evolving, but what's fundamental is that all elephants, just like very much we do, benefit from social interactions. So I'm going to just play a video while I speak for you because I want you to just observe some elephants in the wild doing what wild elephants do best. So day-to-day lives of elephants is very much controlled by their search for food and water and the care for the young ones. And what you see is a herd of elephants going to water as they graze. And this is in Sri Lanka. So to enable them to do this, they need sort of an internal roadmap, right? An internal roadmap of where to go, what to do, what to eat, very much like We have children, we teach them how to cross a road safely, for example, go to school. There's a lot of learning, and it's social learning that elephants teach each other from their older siblings and their mothers, aunts, and sisters. Their communication is very complex. They use sound, so they listen. They use different scents. They have extremely good sense of hearing. So as you know, they say elephants never forget. I'm sure you've heard that term before. And when we say elephants never forget, the reason that they don't is because they have such complex lives, very much like we do. So they have very, very high intelligence. And the social nature in which they live enable that. So now we know we all like elephants, or at least we've had a relationship with elephants. And that's historic globally. You know, there are cave paintings of elephants. Elephants were used and captured and used in war in 2nd century. Historically in Asia, there's a very, very long cultural and historic ties to elephants. They're seen as symbols of power. They're seen as symbols of nobility. Their ownership is seen as prestige. And somehow there seems to be this almost a human need, maybe because elephants are so much like us, that we want to interact with them. And what's happened historically in modern times is that that relationship has changed. So what we've done is we've taken elephants out of a very natural environment and brought them into our environment, which in doing so, what we've done is we've taken away a lot of what you would call their lifestyle. We've really hindered their lifestyle. We hinder their mobility in their ability to move. We dictate the way, what they eat, when they eat. We dictate where they stay. So sadly, this is the plight of most Asian elephants in captivity. They're either in private ownership, or they're in places like zoos, or they're used for entertainment purposes such as tourism, so sort of elephant rides and things that I would elaborate on. So life among humans is a very poor facsimile of what they do in the wild. And as Dr. Plato described in her talk, and that has resulted in PTSD, which is now documented, is this deprivation, and this deprivation of a lifestyle that elephants have evolved to conduct. So the thing is, elephants have evolved to move. They've evolved to range very large distances. So they move kilometers a day looking for food, looking for water. And what we've done is put them in either in chains or restricted them into these tiny little boxes where, there's water, food, and that's it. And I think a lot of times what we have failed to think of or consider as is that that's not sufficient, adequate food, adequate water, and resources is really not sufficient for the well-being of that individual animal, because we've deprived it of sort of more than 90% of its natural lifestyle. So think of yourself and not being able to do what you do every day in your everyday life. And I would even think back to the time when all of us in the whole world was in lockdown and our lifestyles were curtailed for a very long period. And I would reflect on that every time you see a captive elephant. So in captivity, daily life is dictated by whoever keeps the elephant. So the routines are set, they're told what to do, and limited social interactions. They are used in parades, for example, in ceremonial things, and then that too really impacts their daily life. So elephant rides. If you notice in this video, the elephant can barely walk. It can barely take one step forward because it's chained. But, this is done for our entertainment because people think riding an elephant is a fun thing to do. So what I would also like to focus on and show you is that here's a close-up of it so you can actually see that this elephant can barely take one step forward and it's being forced to walk. And this is a daily occurrence in wherever Asian elephants are kept in captivity, where elephant rides are very, very common and much a tourist attraction. And a lot of people actually do it out of ignorance, not understanding the stress this animal is under. So to be fair by captive elephants, the onus is on us to give them the best possible simulation of life in the wild. And I would like to leave you with that thought, is that all the elephants that are in captivity now should have or regain some semblance of normalcy of what life an elephant should have. And then this video is a bunch of happy elephants doing what they should do, which is they play, they dance in the rain. This was a day that it was a very, very hot day. We were watching them, we were studying the elephants, and suddenly there was this huge rainstorm and all the elephants, the adults, the babies, they all just started playing. And this is in the wild. So just remember that every time you see this lonely elephant, this is what their life should be and could have been. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank all the organizers, Pesu and your team, for the opportunity to speak, and I'll be happy to answer any questions after the session.
Thank you so much, Manuri, to share with us about your experience working with elephant in Sri Lanka, in Asia countries. And it brought me back to the memory lane. I see that, elephant cub was trained for circus performers in Indonesia, and how the baby elephant was very confused, don't know what to do. And it was crying all the time. So, this is something we need to take away. And I hope through this webinar, we have more audience and the viewer, they will learn, what is the real cause behind these animal use in entertainment. So thank you much for sharing with us. And I would like to use this opportunity to introduce our next speaker is Muriel Arnold. She's a founding president of One Voice France, rethinking the captive of wild animals as a necessary radical change. And Muriel has been experienced, with all her campaign in France, and her organization certainly has making, the momentum in France. And I think today she can't join us because she is represent the investigation result in the parliament today. So let's share, the video and learn about One Voice, their work in France, please.
Animals in circuses are suffering greatly. Circuses are places of cruelty for the animals, whether they're wild or whether they're domestic. The problem with circuses is that circuses are moving from one town to the other, and therefore the animals have to live inside trailers. They have nowhere to hide. They have no access to areas where they can play, where they can sleep quietly, and they are under the authority of the trainer at all times. The trainer who will deprive them from drinking, from food, in order to obtain what he wants from them. The trainer who will beat them until they will go across the circle of fire. Tigers, for instance, are extremely afraid of fire, as are all the animals. Therefore, the tigers have to be more afraid of the trainer than of fire, of deadly fire. This alone shows how difficult it is for the animals to live inside circuses. We know now that young people, teenagers and children, when they go to the circus and they see animals being trained and being forced by violence to perform, we know now that the young children will not develop empathy as they should do naturally if they had not seen those shows. We need children to develop empathy, to have empathy to the world in order to protect elephants in the wild, lions in the wild. Tigers stop, circuses stop that development. Therefore, it's very important to ban the use of animals in circuses and to help circus people to find other activities, train for other activities in order to make a living. At One Voice, we rescued elephants, chimpanzees, tigers, and lions. More recently, we rescued 10 tigers at one time. It was the biggest rescue in Europe, Russia included. They were living inside a trailer, a 20 square meters trailer, the 10 of them, 24/7. They would never go outside. The females would give birth surrounded by the other tigers with the nervosity, with the fear that can be so understandable. And then the kittens, the pups, would be taken away that very day when they were born in order to be sold to other circuses or to traffic. Because circuses do not only harm animals for the training and the show, they also sell animals to taxidermy. And this is also a big trade in France, and that's why it's important to fight. We managed in 20 years to force 2/3 of circuses to give up their animals. How did we achieve that? By information, by telling the public, do not go, do not pay for even one single ticket. And that's how circuses changed and evolved these last years. The rescues also allowed us to show the state the animals were in. John was a lion locked up in a trailer just for breeding and selling baby lions. When we rescued him, he weighed only 100 kilos, 200 pounds. He should have weighed twice that weight. He didn't have clothes. He had been declawed. His teeth had been grounded. And they were hurting, and it was very painful. We could see that. He had given up. Fortunately, we managed to feed him. And for a year and a half, he lived a very happy life. And we rescued the 4 lionesses who lived in the trailer with him. But so many lions and tigers are still kept inside those trucks and are still breeding, and their offspring are sent to the traffic, to the pet trade, or to other circuses. Last year, a ban was voted in France. Unfortunately, this is a fake ban. Circuses will be able to continue performing and keeping the animals as long as they're not on the road. As soon as they settle down, they can keep their animals. They can rent animals for other shows. And they will be able to breed animals still for some years. It means so many more animals we will need to rescue into sanctuaries. And the ban allows the circuses to keep their animals if there isn't enough space in the sanctuaries. So this is not a ban. And we have to keep on informing people in France that circuses are harmful for the animals. They are places of cruelty. People should never go to a circus unless they don't use animals anymore. That's our fight. That's our fight for all the other lions like John. For the last 2 elephants, Baby and Samba, indeed, there are only 2 elephants left now in circuses. When we started the campaign 20 years ago, there were 40 elephants. Some died inside the trailers, unfortunately, and some were rescued, which is wonderful news. And we will keep on fighting until the very last elephant, the very last tiger, the very last lion is out of these trailers. And then we will focus on the domestic animals because they should not be there either.
Thank you for Muriel, and it's very sad she won't be here, but it's very, very powerful talk. And I strongly believe what she's saying is we need to make more effort to get more people understand and learn the, behind these spotlight, behind the lovely music and dance, these animals are their reality for being used for entertainment. And I also strongly believe people need to know so they can make informed choice. That's why in ACTAsia, we teach kids about animals have feelings. They learn these animals, they don't belong just for human as resources. So I hope the kids can grow up, not want to go to watch, circus to be part of, these issues that we're not in various circle. So, we really, really great to have these 4 speakers, and I would like to ask our speakers and Rohan to turn on your video, and Heidi, and over to you. We have a great response for a few questions as well, and I hope the speaker have seen the question and we can answer them as well. Heidi?
Yes, thank you very much, Pei. So unfortunately, 2 of the speakers in this first session will not be here as part of the panel discussion, but we do have Will and Minori. And so I'll take the first question that was put into the Q&A box, and I will address this one to Will. In countries where there is legislation against animals and performances, how is the issue of the vendors being dealt with? Are there any authorities involved in the gradual withdrawal of circus in the form of policy guidance towards retraining or transferring to other industries, or is it a natural elimination as the market fades?
Yeah, well, thank you to whomever asked that question. I really can only reflect, I think, on the situation that occurred in the United Kingdom, and particularly specifically in England and Wales, because we have the devolved jurisdictions. Let me say that when I was a young person, so a long time ago, the highlight of the New Year's Day television festival, every New Year's Day, there would be a 2-hour special of the circus, involving animals, elephants, lions, tigers jumping through hoops, the whole thing. And then that disappeared. And progressively since that time, the public's appetite for seeing wild animals in circuses, an enlightened public, a public who have begun to truly understand what the consequences for the animals involved in circus performance are. We've just seen the number of people turning up to circuses declining and declining, 700-seat arenas with 80 people, 100 people in them. And that's at a weekend when it should be full. Eventually, after a long period of delay, legislation was introduced which ended the use of wild animals in circuses in England and Wales. And by that time, there were just 42, I think it was, animals in circuses, of which most of whom could be found alternative accommodation, zebras, camels, and other species which are defined in UK law as wild animals. I believe there were 6 big cats, and they, sadly, they went over to the continent. They went to Europe, where they may well still be being used in circuses. But there are no wild animals in circuses in the United Kingdom, just as there are no dolphins in Dolphinaria in the United Kingdom anymore. And so it's not a question of so much of enforcing a situation. As the public becomes better informed, just as is happening through this really important webinar, the public starts to make decisions with their feet, and they decide not to go, not to take their children, not to endorse that kind of behavior, not to spend their money on that, but to spend their money on something else, perhaps something more wildlife friendly and nature friendly. So it is, I think, most likely to be driven through education, through compassionate campaigning, and through natural wastage. You will end up at a 0.
Thank you. Appreciate the response there. Very good. The second question, I will direct this one to Minori. It's specifically about elephants. Zoos argue that they are helping elephant conservation as elephants are unsafe. I guess the population of elephants are unsafe in the wild and are endangered. So maintaining a pool of captive elephants is important. Zoos also argue that their captive elephants enable research. What is the counter to these arguments?
What I'll do is I'll answer the question and I'll make it common to African and Asian elephants because it's a common answer, so it's relatable, is that there is no place where you can hold a sufficient number of captive elephants in order to put them back into the wild in the event they are taken away or they go extinct in the wild. It's something that you cannot do. Secondly, what we are not doing is actually adequately addressing the issues wild elephants face, which is habitat loss and poaching and such. And that is sort of primary concern. So conservation happens in the wild spaces where the wildlife belong. The zoos used to have a purpose of education, but somewhat now that, as Will described, it's starting to get quite outdated. And as technology improves, we really don't need to go and see an animal physically in a zoo when, we can see it on the Discovery Channel, we can stream it, there are live cams from all over the wild. It's so much more accessible than before. Zoos served a purpose back then, and I think they are fast outliving their purpose. And in terms of the research question, yes, they do provide some answers. Medical health, veterinary, for example, but it's not essential. These are things that even for veterinary research, wild elephants are easily accessible now.
Thank you. And as a follow-up question, there was another question there about any alternatives be suggested to going to a facility that provides elephant rides? Are there any kinds of facilities that people can go see elephants, but not necessarily?
So everybody likes to go and everybody likes to do something with elephants. I mean, that's a given, right? So there's so much in our cultural history, regardless of where we're from. So something that we can think about is trying to see elephants in the wild, number one. And that's very doable now. Second is that if you are in a place where there are elephants, can you please see how they're kept? So try to visit places like sanctuaries where elephants are allowed to do what elephants do. And you really don't need to interact with elephants to get to know elephants. You can just watch them. They're entertaining as is. So they don't need to do tricks. You can just watch them. You don't need to ride them. You don't need to touch them. You don't need to take selfies with them. Please don't. Just watch them because they're actually really entertaining and they speak for themselves. So focus on the really wild, the elephant-friendly facilities.
Thanks. Yes, Will, I was coming to you because I also had a follow-up question, so maybe you can add to what you want to say. One of the questions was, you sort of touched on this a little bit already. What can the public do to improve the quality of life of wildlife and reduce animal performances?
Gosh, thank you, Heidi. And I so agree with what my colleague, Dr. Gunawardena has said in response to that first or the second question. I just got a few things quickly to add to that. You know, with regard to the research that's carried out in zoos, the main piece of research, apart from some behavioral research, which actually tends to prove that elephants behave psychologically abnormally in zoos, is to do with elephant herpes. Actually, elephant herpes, although it is very occasionally found in the wild, is predominantly a disease found in captivity in zoos. So the research is being carried out to try and address an issue that is largely only found in zoos. With regard to the conservation role of zoos, the IUCN, no less, has said that there's no role for captive breeding in elephant conservation. And in fact, you know, our research, which is backed up by others, suggests that more elephants die in captivity than are born in captivity. So you could argue that, that zoos are consumers of elephants. And then the last thing is we have to re-educate ourselves. There is an expectation, and Minori touched on it, there's an expectation that because we can do something, we should do something. Because we can bring elephants and lions and tigers from all over the world and put them in captive facilities, you know, in our nearest city, or dolphins or killer whales or whatever, that's acceptable. But it isn't. It isn't acceptable, and we need to re-educate ourselves not to have that expectation any more than I would love to go and see the Great Wall of China. I tell you now, I would love to see it. The chances of me ever doing it are very low. I'm unlikely to travel across to China, sadly, to see it. But I have to educate myself not to have that expectation. If it was my ultimate burning passion to see the Great Wall of China or the Australian Great Barrier Reef or the pyramids in Egypt, then that may be what I would do. But this isn't what everyone can do. We have to understand that and stop thinking that we have the power to do whatever we want, regardless of the consequences for the animals involved. It's really important. I'm sorry, and you asked me a sort of supplemental question. What can people do? Well, Minori's touched on it. You know, go with open eyes. If you're going to any place with captive animals, go with open eyes. Go with an informed mind. Do some little bit of research beforehand. I mean, I remember as a young person going to the London Zoo and seeing the polar bear walking from one side of the enclosure back to the other, spinning on his back legs and then walking back and walking back. And I would listen to the comments of some of the visitors and they'd say, oh, look, the bear's dancing for us. The bear is not dancing for you. The bear is mad. The bear has lost his reason. He is insane. And he's created this world, just like happens with many human beings who've suffered some kind of extreme trauma. They withdraw into their own mental world for their own survival. They can no longer cope with the world as it is. So they create an alternative universe that they live in. You'll have seen it if you've ever watched a program or visited a hospital where people with mental problems are being treated and helped. People will be sitting with their hands clenched, rocking backwards and forwards, that is the bear walking backwards and forwards in the enclosure. It is no different. And I've talked to clinical psychologists who confirm this to be the case. So if you're going to see animals in captivity, go with that inquiring mind, go with that open eye. And then if you are unhappy or anxious about what you see, respond to that, write to the zoo, contact the local authorities and tell them that you're unhappy, that this does not meet your expectations, and ask them to put their efforts into helping conserve wildlife where it really needs help, which is in the wild. And if you have a particular case that you want to bring to our attention, come to Born Free. We have a thing called Raise the Red Flag, and it is specifically designed for people who see something that upsets them to do with wild animals in captivity. Come to us and tell us what you see, and we will try to help move that argument forward.
Excellent. Well, because Heidi has a stones in her area, so I'm going to step in for her. There was one last question I want to ask you, but before that, I just think you're right. It's really important. We check it out the facility before you do the elephant ride. Maybe if you're not sure, never do it. So don't take a risk because your happiness could be their suffering. And the one question I think is very good from the audience is, early this year, we read a news report that Spain is set to ban zoos and want them to convert zoo into rescue centers. We still need to see how it will be implemented. But do you believe that is a viable method to slow move away from zoos? I think this it could be both speakers, or Steve, you on, or Rob, would you be able to answer?
I would say that it offers one pathway. I don't know if Minori or Rob would agree. I think it offers one pathway away from what we have now, progressively towards something different. After all, imagine that the government of China decided upon consideration that there should no longer be zoos. What is going to happen to all the animals? So there would need to be a transition period away from that while resources and efforts are redirected towards the conservation of habitats and species where they belong in the wild. So they would have to become less commercially oriented, more with a higher welfare priority, with no breeding, because you don't want to be recruiting animals in and filling up space when you want to be gently and humanely and compassionately closing the industry down. So that it is definitely one pathway. And I did also, just sorry to say, I forgot to mention Minori's really important point about taking selfies. Selfies perpetuate suffering. We actually call them selfish selfies because they're nothing to do with the animal. They're all to do with you. It's all about you in the picture, you next to the elephant, you riding the elephant, you kissing the dolphin, whatever it happens to be. It's the most selfish form of social media that's there. And I am in touch with Facebook and others to try and persuade them to say that that should be regarded as animal abuse.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for Mallory. Do you have anything to add about the last point?
Just agreeing with Will that we really do need to look at ways to start phasing zoos out. But we must understand that it's going to be a very long-term body of work that will take immense amounts of resources, and also a change in how we look at how do we interact with wildlife. And that's fundamental. And then we have to really move away from this need to be up close and personal. And it's that need that drives the zoo industry as such. Is this need to see all the African animals, all the South American animals, all of them in one place, right? So as consumers, we need to educate ourselves and also look at how to disassociate ourselves from, this need, because there are lots of other alternatives.
Thank you. I think it's start to be aware of the issue and then the way for seeking the next step, seeking for alternative. And thank you so much for both speakers for the first section. If you're happy to be contacted, please send you an email in the chat. And we're going to move to the second section. We have even more brilliant speakers. They will share us about their knowledge. And first one I'm going to introduce for our second section's first speaker is Stephen Coyle. And he has spent more than 35 years caring for animals. He has spent the last 20 years specializing in elephant care. Steve has become globally recognized elephant care professional and very well respected for his knowledge of target training using positive enforcement, designing facilities that support elephant health and specialize in proper elephant food care. In July 2016, established a nonprofit organization called Elephant Care Unchained. Since then, Steve have helped more than hundreds elephants in 6 countries, that including India, Indonesia, Cambodia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. His passion and work ethic had driven him from Elephant Care Unchained. Steve's original conception of Elephant Care Unchained was born in early 2013 when he made his first trip to India as skilled volunteer helping organization in northern India. It was there he learned about the cruel treatment of elephant in their native country. The brutality that elephants endure daily was something Steve felt compelled to address. It was after the eye-opening experience, Steve decided to commit his life to improving elephants' life globally. He has now established Elephant Care Unchained, a 501c3 organization dedicated to eliminating cruelty and improving animal welfare in their native country. And his talk will be about working in different cultures to improve elephant welfare. Thank you, Steve. Over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for allowing me to speak. Let me just get this set up here. Can we see that? Everybody's good? We can see it, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is kind of my story, kind of things that I do. I've been spending, 20 years with elephants, or 21 years soon enough. Here is my resume, if you will. I guess what's important here is that Elephant Care Unchained is basically making whatever the elephant's life is better, whatever situation, whatever circumstance. There's thousands of elephants out there that are living in terrible captive situations. And so what I've kind of chosen to do is to help make their life, whatever that life may be, better. And I have some examples of that throughout this talk. I do have a degree in zoology, not that it really matters to do what I do, but just so you know. Throughout my travels, throughout things that we've all seen, we've seen elephants in different situations, different environments that aren't very good for them. And I've taken these pictures over the years, just different things that I don't recommend. Not good for the elephants, not good for the people, right? Not safe. Different things that we will see, and I'll talk about some specific examples. Actually, in this cage up here, there's actually an elephant chained inside that cage, just to give you an idea of things that I will see in my travels. So basically, kind of what I do is basically I help in different stages of care for these elephants. Like I said, no matter where they are, no matter who keeps them, how they keep them, it's not the elephant's choice. They didn't sign up to be a slave, if you will. And so basically, these 3 examples are 3 different elephants I'll talk about, and kind of basically different stages of their care, but the elephant's path to wellness and kind of my contribution to helping improve their lives, right? So what we're looking at here is a short video. I'm going to try to go fast through some of these videos here. Is it playing? Is the video playing? It's not playing on my end.
No, I just can't see the picture.
Okay.
Very slowly.
All right, let me try that.
I think the buffering is very slow, Steve.
Yeah, it shouldn't be on my end. Should be fast. Okay, there we go. I'll do it that way. All right, so this is a temple elephant. It's not the worst that I've seen, but like I said, there's thousands of elephants out there, and his life is pretty miserable, right? So why would we keep an elephant like this, right? He's chained on his back leg, a short chain. He's on concrete, which is terrible. Chain on the front leg, as we can see, bored, nothing to do, right? So why do we keep him like this, right? Why do we keep this elephant? Well, we keep him so we can do something like this with him. And this is a, let me just turn the volume down here. So basically, this is a festival. This is the same elephant. So he's chained on all four legs. He's lit up just so we can get enjoyment. He's got people on his back. Again, not safe for the people, not good for the elephant. It's only the reason why we do these things to these elephants is for our benefit. You know, we need to start talking about doing things for the elephant, you know, not doing things to the elephant, right? And so my approach has always been, okay, this is his life. This is not my battle to try to stop this thing from happening. I would prefer them not being here in this situation. So what can I do? What can I do about it? Well, same elephant again. I'm able to do some footwork. And what's important about this video, and it's not so much me doing footwork. It allows me an opportunity to, what I say, plant seeds and explain why things are bad, why his feet are bad, why he has issues. Why things are, because of the environment that they're kept in, that it allows me an opportunity to teach. And this takes, I do all 4 feet. This takes anywhere from an hour, hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on the severity of the situation. Again, that's the same elephant. So it allows me to kind of plant seeds and say, you know what, maybe if we didn't put him in this situation, he would be healthier, his feet. And taking care of elephants' feet is incredibly important. It's probably the most important thing for a captive elephant is taking care of their feet, right? Same elephant again. Foot care sometimes is not enough. And I'm very thankful for this particular play. This young mahout was very open to these suggestions. And so I'll just play this video and I'll talk through it. What we're looking at is enrichment, okay? So up in that corner picture, I was hanging enrichment from these pillars, but these pillars are concrete. And he was actually cracking these, so we had to change it. So we put this barrel here, right? Again, this is not a big deal. This is nothing revolutionary. But what this is probably the first ever enrichment feeder for a temple elephant anywhere in the world. And this happened less than a year ago. Again, same elephant. So his life just got a little bit better, right? And so this is the idea, is that we improve their lives. We expose people to different ways of caring for elephants and what elephants actually need and what they should have, right? And so we build relationships. We do things for the elephants. You know, we help out the people that help the elephants. And so then, let me just fast forward a little bit. You can see the idea here, right? So then over time, right, we develop more relationships. And so here's a different elephant, farther along in her kind of, I guess it'll make sense. I took this video maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It's been a while, but this is another temple elephant. Not much going on. Again, for our enjoyment, for our, you know, and you'll see kind of what happens here. So this elephant, they give the mahout some money, and the elephant touches them on their head for a blessing. So this 5 seconds of a blessing is a lifetime of suffering and misery for this elephant. And you can trade a temple elephant for a circus elephant, for even some zoos, for different places. So these elephants aren't solely just these elephants. There's thousands of elephants out there living in terrible situations. And you kind of see what I'm talking about here. Pay some money, and then I get my blessing, right? And so, again, makes us feel good, but it's not so great for the elephant. So over time, people start to realize, well, maybe this isn't the best thing. Maybe we should do more for the elephant, right? Maybe we should rescue this elephant. So about a year later, she was rescued. I got a phone call. I went, helped, did some target training, give some enrichment. She's got some friends now. And this is just a little short video of some target training. The end result, being in an improper environment, very bad. And so instead of having an ankus or a bullhook, we have a target. And you can see she's pretty well trusting now of the whole process. And so it allowed us to be kind, be gentle with her, and earn her trust. And now she has an amazing life at a very nice facility. And so kind of the final stage I like to talk about is this elephant here. This elephant is a very, very, very famous elephant. Unfortunately, she gave rides to tourists for over 20 years in the streets. And you can see in the middle picture there, she actually has sandals put on her feet because they knew it was bad, but you know, they loved her and they wanted her to keep giving rides. And again, for our enjoyment. Didn't do anything for the elephant, so they gave her these slippers, and became even worse off. And so now she's got issues with 3 of her, and that was 10 years ago, mind you. And she has an amazing life now. And this is just a sped up video. I'll just talk as it plays. This elephant has issues with 3 of her 4 feet. She requires at least an hour of intense care, daily care for at least an hour a day, and you'll see kind of what happens. And so, yeah, she has an amazing life now. So this is kind of what I would hope all captive elephants would get. She lives in an open forest, free to roam around all day long. Unfortunately, the damage was already done to her for the 20 years of walking the streets. And so now this intense care that she gets, ideally you want elephants to be rescued and saved before they get damaged, before they get injured. And so, yeah, so you guys can get an idea of that. But this is kind of, I guess, the final stage of how captive elephants, if they're going to be captive, they need to have a free life. And she's an amazing elephant. I spent a lot of time with her over the past few years. And then the last video, talking about foot care is very important. It's just, you know, elephants on their feet. They get a lot of foot problems. They're prone to foot problems. The knowledge of taking care of elephants' feet in captivity is not there, is lost. And so this was, you know, I contributed probably the final 10% to do some specialized care with this elephant, because she had an amazing life now, and she's able to live as an elephant should live, in the, I guess, the best case scenario. And you can kind of just get an example of what's possible. Ideally, you don't want to get to this stage, but if you need to, you can, you know, there's hot water there, hot water, Epsom salt kind of thing. So anyway, yeah, it's kind of the story, the stages of elephant care. And you know, these elephants, unfortunately, that there's, like I said, there's thousands of them out there, and they all need care. And they all need, we need to do better for them.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah?
Thank you.
So,
this is brilliant. You were, you know,
that's all I have.
Your footage is so real, but it's so heartwarming. You know, through the years, the wildlife has, you know, gradually evolved, even become the working animals. And the food care in the working animals is very common need to be addressed. And I think your experience working in so many different Asian countries will be really amazing. And we would, you know, please stay with us. And then when we have a panel discussion, we would have more questions for you. So we're going to introduce my next speaker is Rob Laydlaw, and is a very old friend of mine. And when going back years, my first field trip with Rob was, you know, our work to assess Indonesian zoos using animals for entertainment. And so years later, it's very, you know, to great honor to have him today to talk with us. Rob Laydlaw has been working to protect the interests and well-being of animals in Canada and around the world since 1979. He specializes in captive wildlife issue and is a chartered biologist, founder of the wildlife protection organization ZooCheck, and has received the prestigious Frederick MAG Grand Lifetime Achievement Award for substantial contribution to animal welfare in Canada. He's also an award-winning author for 11 children's books about animal welfare and wildlife protection. So from an advocate to an author, as well as many numerous article, reports, book, chapter, and other material. Rob also holds a master herpetologist certificate, and he's going to talk to us about Far from the Deep Blue Sea, a personal commentary on whale and dolphin captivity. Hi, Rob.
Yes, hello. My video, it says the host has stopped my video, so I don't know.
Oh, can you stop and open again?
Okay, I just got a prompt.
Oh, we got it. We got it. We can see you now. Oh.
Okay. Okay, and I just want to share my screen too, if I'm able to do that. Share, and you can let me know if everyone can see that.
It. We can see it.
Okay.
If you move to the bottom, you can do the full screen.
Okay, I will do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I titled this commentary Far from the Deep Blue Sea, and I've always been someone who makes a point of watching whales in the wild, so I've seen them in the deep blue sea. And I've also, over the last almost 40 years, seen whales all over the world in captivity. And this is Kamogawa SeaWorld in Japan. And this is typical of the kinds of things that you would see. So I thought titling the commentary Far from the Deep Blue Sea was very appropriate when you look at how these animals are kept in captivity. On June 21st, 2019, a new law was passed in Canada. It was called the Ending the Captivity of Whales and Dolphins Act, and it took nearly 5 years to work itself through the federal lawmaking process. The law was supported by, we think, the majority of Canadians, by animal welfare and wildlife organizations, and most surprisingly, ended up being supported by the Government of Canada. And it was introduced by a highly regarded First Nations senator that saw the bill as a step towards reconciliation of us humans, with the natural world. And he's pursued other legislation that we're working on today as well. Now, the act, when it was being talked about in the Senate of Canada and in Parliament, it was very interesting because people were talking about discomfort, stress, suffering, trauma, the needs of animals. And the whole premise of this particular act is remarkably not about economics or not about anything else. It's about the best interests of the animals. So the act made it illegal in Canada to import, possess, breed, or display whales or dolphins, except in those unusual circumstances where it would be in the best interests of animals to do so, like when you're retiring maybe a whale, an orca, or a beluga to a sanctuary. That would be in its best interests. And it also went further. It said it was illegal in Canada to use these animals in entertainment. It did grandfather existing animals. We had only 2 facilities in Canada that kept marine mammals like this. And one of them got rid of their sole remaining dolphin, and the other currently still is struggling to try to deal with the animals that they have. So the passage of the Ending of the Captivity of Whales and Dolphins Act ensured an end to the whole idea, the whole industry of keeping whales and dolphins in captivity. Now, dolphin and whale captivity goes back a long time. In the 1860s, there was a dolphinarium in London, and then in the 1870s, it moved to North America. The first dolphinarium in the United States that the public could visit was built in 1938 in Florida. And soon after that, they became quite popular and more of them were constructed. But while they were around, there were new animals coming into captivity, and one of them was the killer whale, the orca. So the first orca ever kept in captivity was right here in Canada, and it occurred in 1964 when a young whale was harpooned and dragged to Vancouver Harbor and was put on display. They actually had wanted to harpoon the whale so that they could take the whale's dead carcass and use it as reference for making a model of whales, but this poor little whale, who was just a baby, survived and was put in a harbor and survived for just 86 days. 8 months later, another baby whale was caught. That whale survived about a year. But what happened is that people all over the world who wanted to profit off animals saw that these animals were popular and could probably make them money, so they wanted them too. And that was really sort of the impetus for this more wide-scale expansion of marine parks and aquariums around the world. Now, with it came a lot of controversy, both here in Canada and elsewhere around the world. And throughout the decades that followed since the 1960s, thousands of people have been engaged in campaigns, activities, and events to try to help captive cetaceans. And it's been a very long, slow journey. This is the whale that was in the picture, the whale that was harpooned and captured. And you can see that he's very, very small. Now, there were a couple of pivotal events, certainly here in North America, that I wanted to mention. One of them was in 1993, the release of the Free Willy movie. And that was the first time that in a major motion picture, people saw this whole idea of whales being captive as prisoners and their need to get out into the wild. And the movie really educated a lot of people, including millions and millions of kids. And then in 2006, a documentary called Blackfish came out that was really game-changing and really educated additional millions of people and sort of helped put one of the nails in the coffin of at least some animals in some situations being kept. So, you know, a lot of people say, well, why all the concern about whales and dolphins? And I just wanted to mention two aspects of cetaceans that are fundamental to their lives and their health and welfare that I believe should preclude them from ever being kept in captivity. One of those things is their need for space. These are wide-ranging, often deep-diving animals. There is absolutely no way, it is impossible to provide enough space for these animals to express a full range of species-typical movements and behaviors. It can't be done. Think about it. Even dolphins will inhabit expansive territories ranging from tens to hundreds of square kilometers. And when you look at the larger whales, it could be hundreds to tens of thousands of square kilometers of space. You can't compress these animals that live in these wide spaces into these microscopically small environments and expect them to do well. And they don't just move horizontally, they also move up and down the water column. A deep dive for a whale in a pool would be 6 meters. But in the wild, they can move up and down the water column, and they do. The deepest dive recorded for a beluga was 647 meters, more than 2,000 feet below the surface of the water. These are animals that live in this three-dimensional environment. So when you look at them in tanks, the space that they're provided horizontally and vertically just isn't there. It's very, very poor. The second thing I wanted to mention is the social environments, because cetaceans rank among the most intelligent and social animals that exist in the world today. They have extremely complex, often lifelong social relationships with immediate and extended family members, as well as other social interactions, call them friendships, if you like, with many other whales. It's very similar to elephants. Just to give you an example, male orcas stay they're in the same family with their mother their entire lives. Belugas will also have these relationships, some of them long-term. They have more of a fission-fusion society, and they sometimes congregate in numbers exceeding hundreds or even thousands. They are highly social animals. That is the essence of their being. They're social. And the artificial social groupings of captivity and the routine isolation of just a few animals in tiny tanks is abnormal, damaging, and cruel. You cannot, in captivity, provide a proper social context for these animals. So where do we go from here? Well, there's no magic bullet answer, but I'll just tell you 4 things that I think need to occur. Well, number one, all over the world, everybody that's concerned has to push for progressive laws, regulations, and policies that positively impact whales and dolphins, both in captivity and in the wild, both to prevent new whales from coming into captivity and to try to get rid of captivity as well. And when you look at law development and regulatory regimes and all that, everything moves incrementally, but we've got to keep pushing, move the bar upward at all times. So we've got to do that. The second thing we have to do is work for the repatriation of currently captive whales and dolphins for the wild. There's a lot of challenges in doing so, but it can be done. If you look at the example of Keiko, if you look at the Russian whales that were just released from the Russian whale jail, or Will Travers mentioned the Into the Blue project that the Born Free Foundation did many years ago, it can be done, and that is an option for some animals. We have to support the creation of aquatic sanctuaries, such as the one in this picture on my screen. And you can see on the left side of the picture, that white blob, that's a beluga. You can see that the bay that this beluga is in this sanctuary in Iceland is thousands of times longer than the beluga itself. That's the scale we need for these animals. So we need to explore more in the world of sanctuaries and how we can accommodate these animals in a different, more humane way where their best interests are served. And then the fourth thing is we have to push for mitigation to the extent possible some of the challenges faced by cetaceans currently in captivity and the damage that has occurred to them. And we saw that with the previous speaker talking about elephants and trying to mitigate some of their issues. We need to do the same. We need to make every little gain we can for those animals that are currently there. Will things change throughout the world as they have in Canada and other jurisdictions? I honestly don't know. I do know that helping animals is as much about politics as science, and that's something that we all have to recognize. And I believe it can change. You know, I've seen it myself in many areas. I believe it can change. But what I will say to everybody listening is whether it changes or not, it's up to you to make it happen wherever you are, whatever your position in life is. Do your part in trying to make that change happen, and if enough people do, it will. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you for listening, and thank you to ACTAsia and everybody else who organized this particular webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rob. And as usual, you're a sea of knowledge, and really, it's like you said, we don't know what we're trying to, but it's really important we keep trying. And certainly your effort in Canada is very impressive. And certainly in terms of legislation and policy is where we need to address as well, if we can. Thank you, but stay with us. We got the panel, we got discussion and questions for you as well. And I would like to introduce our second and our third speaker for the second panel is David Kausman, an autonomy and founder of Cambodia Wildlife Sanctuary and CEO of EcoFlex, California, United States. And he's a trial lawyer in Los Angeles for 42 years, where he has been long working to save animals, including elephant on a pro bono basis. And he and his team has spent over 10 years studying the problem and trying to free Billy, the long bull elephant in the Los Angeles Zoo. In 2001, he co-founded the Cambodia Wildlife Sanctuary and soon began a multi-decade partnership with Charlotte and her husband, Derek, working on many projects, including many animal rescue with emphasis upon saving elephants in Cambodia, Thailand, and recently the rescue of Caravan from Pakistan Zoo. He's now in his own jungle sanctuary in Cambodia. He also founded EcoFlix, the first not-for-profit streaming video service media company dedicated to save animals and the planet. Right. Thank you. David, over to you.
My video's blocked.
Typical. We can never win with the technology. Do you want to start and stop? And
there we go.
Yes, we got it.
There we go. Well, thank you, Pesu and Laurent, for including me in this amazing group of advocates. And I've been involved in the animal world in a way that's a little bit different than most of the speakers here. I spent 42 years as a trial lawyer, and I did a lot of work for a lot of different kinds of captive animals from a legal perspective, trying to help them through the system. And at the same time, I started the Cambodia Wildlife Sanctuary and became involved in these animal rescues, particularly elephants, although not exclusively. And I want to talk a little bit about one case because I think it is the tip of the spear when we're talking about elephants in captivity. The Los Angeles Zoo, touted as one of the greatest zoos in the world. And rather than spout my own opinions, I wanted to share with you some selected findings from the trial judge who heard the case from start to finish. He literally heard the evidence from both sides, arguments, and then wrote his findings. And I want to share his words because I think it really highlights the objective facts, not what some animal advocate like I might say. So with that, I'm going to jump into his findings. He said, all is not well at the Elephants of Asia exhibit at the Los Angeles Zoo. Contrary to what the zoo representatives may have told the Los Angeles City Council in order to get construction of the $42 million exhibit approved and funded, the elephants are not healthy, happy, and thriving. The court finds plaintiff has proven by a preponderance of the evidence, we were the plaintiffs, that the grounds of the Elephants of Asia exhibit on which the elephants regularly walk is hard, not varied and soft, and the substrate of the exhibit creates a risk of injury to the elephants. And that includes to their joints, feet, and nails. Dr. Ensley, one of the experts who testified for the plaintiffs, said based on the review of his medical and death records of the Los Angeles Zoo, 9 of the 16 elephants who have died at the zoo had arthritis or degenerative joint disease. And Dr. Eng, the veterinarian for the zoo, testified that the substrate on which the elephants walk can make a big difference in the health of their feet. He had actually recommended that for the new elephant exhibit in the Los Angeles Zoo, they should install a varied, relatively soft substrate that would allow for cushioning. The zoo, however, ignored the recommendation and built the current exhibit with nothing like the kind of soft substrate he had recommended. Shockingly, he also testified that the keepers have told him that they regularly rototill the soil in the exhibit, when in fact the opposite is true. It is undisputed that the elephant keepers in the Los Angeles Zoo do not rototill the surface of the exhibit and never have, not once. The problem is compounded by the fact that the available surface area for the elephants is much smaller than the total exhibit space, because significant portions of the exhibit are closed to the elephants, either for certain periods of time by gates used to separate Billy from Tina and Jewel, the 2 females that were brought in, or permanently by electrically charged or hot wires that keep the elephants away from areas of trees, brush, and grass within the exhibit. Dr. Ensley, a veterinarian who testified for the plaintiffs, explained in uncontroverted testimony the trees and other elements of the exhibit have electrical wires that will shock the elephants if they come close. Elephants enjoy rubbing against and playing with trees and like to knock them over and eat them. The trees and planters in the exhibit, however, are surrounded by electrical wires that prevent the elephants from getting close to them or walking near them. The photographic evidence confirms this testimony. Dr. Ensley testified that, in fact, there are no areas of grass that are not hot wired with electrical wires. It is one thing to place electrical wiring and fencing, to place electric fencing between elephants and something they are not interested in. It is another thing to place such electric hot wiring between the elephants and something they like, need, and use as part of their natural behavior. The small size of the Los Angeles Zoo, which, by the way, touts itself as being large, the small size of the Los Angeles Zoo has other adverse health effects. In addition to increasing the hardness of the substrate, as Dr. Ensley testified without contradiction again, the relatively small amount of space in the elephant exhibit contributes to contamination because there's more elephant urine and fecal matter in the small space. This leads to an increased risk and incidence of infection. As the elephants are forced to live longer periods of time with their waste and are unable to leave the areas in which they urinate and defecate. In the wild, they move on. In captivity, they stand or walk in it. Dr. Ng, again, the zoo vet, confirmed that urine in an exhibit can create a risk of such an infection for a captive elephant because foot problems and abscesses are common for captive elephants and infections from urine get into an elephant's foot pad through cracks. The evidence also shows that the quality of the lives in the Los Angeles Zoo elephant exhibit is not good, and this is having serious repercussions for their physical and emotional well-being. For example, all three animals, and Billy in particular, engage in or exhibit a behavior that everyone on both sides, with one or two significant exceptions, agrees is abnormal and healthy, which the parties refer to as stereotypic behavior or a stereotype. The most credible testimony was the testimony of Dr. Joyce Poole, who has advanced degrees in elephant behavior from the University of Cambridge and Princeton University and has become one of the world's leading experts on elephant behavior. She testified unequivocally that the stereotypic behavior exhibited by the three elephants in the Los Angeles Zoo is not an expression of excitement upon seeing a zookeeper or at the prospect of being fed, as some zoo employees claim. She testified that this behavior is never seen in wild elephants as an expression of excitement or happiness. Then, in response to the testimony of Dr. Poole, defendants submitted the testimony of Victoria Guarnett, who's been an elephant keeper in the Los Angeles Zoo for 16 years. Ms. Guarnett, although dedicated to the elephants, she says, has no experience with elephants in the wild. And she had some shocking gaps in her knowledge of elephants, and for someone with the title senior elephant keeper, had some surprising misconceptions. For example, Ms. Guarnett believes that the head bobbing behavior of Billy and Jewel is a sign of happiness and comfort, like a dog wagging his tail. There is no evidence in the record to support such a conclusion. That Ms. Guarnett continues to believe that such behavior is an expression of happiness and contentment appears to be part of her anthropomorphic fantasy that the elephants are happy to see her and live their lives in captivity. Let's see here. Oh yes, Dr. Ng, the zoo vet, testified that the Los Angeles Zoo is not doing anything to address this behavior, even though he knows that the stereotypic behavior can increase the risk of foot cracks and infections. Since Billy moved into the new exhibit in 2010, his head bobbing increased up to 45% of his time. Thus, he is essentially head bobbing and swaying and rocking in place nearly half of his observable life. No wonder, as Mr. Lewis, the director of the zoo, admitted, zoo employees hear patrons ask, "What is so wrong with the zoo's elephants?" Dr. Poole testified that Billy also suffers because his heightened and extended must period has no outlet. And because he does not have enough space to deal with his frustration, it's undisputed that his must period is abnormally long. Perhaps most significantly, the testimony of Dr. Oosterhuis on cross-examination, again a witness called by the defendants, was not much different than an outline of plaintiff's claims in this case, and perhaps as much as the testimony of any witness supported plaintiff's claims. He testified that the stereotypic behavior exhibited by all three of the elephants in the zoo, rocking and swaying, places too much pressure on the elephant's feet and causes cracks in the nails. And significantly, the evidence is undisputed that there are tests that could be conducted to investigate whether the elephants are emotionally happy. Dr. Ng testified that he could test elephant blood or fecal samples for cortisol or adrenaline. And after establishing a baseline, the zoo could use cortisol tests to determine their emotional states. Dr. Ng, the zoo vet, confirmed that no veterinarian at the zoo has ever done any such work. The bottom line is to say that these elephants are healthy and happy is absolutely not true. And the fact that some high-ranking employees appear to believe so is delusional. So that is the finding of a judge. And I think the bottom line is that elephants living in zoos or any form of captivity in small spaces is really just terrible, as has been outlined before. And Kavan's presence now at the Cambodia sanctuary, where he has his own 30-acre jungle pen, stopped his stereotypic behavior, which demonstrates, as was said earlier, it can be ameliorated with proper care. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I can see you try so hard with your so much information on the trial and try to condense with 10 minutes. It was very cruel to you. Sorry about that. I apologize for that. But I think, it's from your case really have been given us, the experience and understanding, from a legal professions, not only from just from the behavioral or whether, biological point of view, this is wrong to keep wildlife in entertainment in these cases. So it's great to be able to hear from different profession and to advocate for these animals as well. And I must welcome our next speaker, and I really feel for her, because I feel with all of us have 30 every speakers today, for the attendees, brilliant, because speakers all have 30 years 40 years experience. So I was kind of calculating is plus together we probably have 100 years of experience about captive wildlife in entertainment. And I think I want to welcome our next speakers, but she is the hope for us with when we see so many grooming issues, is Nikita Dewan, as a founder of Youth for Animals and Youth Ambassador at Born Free Foundation, member of IUCN SSC New Delhi, India. And she wants to talk to us about elephant in captivity, the case of Shankara in Delhi Zoo. And Nikita is a high school student at American Embassy School in New Delhi. She has always been passionate about animal rights and environmental conservation, and is the founder of an animal welfare initiative called Youth for Animals. Nikita is leading organization's flagship campaign called Free Shankara Delhi Zoo to free Shankara, and African elephant languishing in the Delhi Zoo from his life in solitary captivity. Nikita has filed a legal petition in Delhi High Court for Shankara's freedom and has received over 200,000 signatures for her online petition. The campaign has been covered extensively by Indian and international media, including BBC, ABC News, Newsweek, and Financial Times, Hindustan Times, Times of India, Indian Express, etc. Nikita is a recipient of the prestigious Diana Award and the Youth Award for the Federation of Indian Animal Protection Organization. She is Youth Ambassador for Born Free Foundation and Earth Day Organization, and a member of IUCN Commission on Education and Communication, CEC. Nikita is also currently a show host for All About Animals Radio, a community radio based out of the UK. So Nikita, we will hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. And inviting me to this panel. I firstly just wanted to thank all the organizers and all the speakers who've done such incredible work in wildlife captivity. I'm learning about this field every day, and it's very cool to hear from people as accomplished and passionate as everyone on here. So yeah, I'm Nikita Dewan, a 12th grade student in New Delhi who, as you mentioned, started Youth for Animals, an initiative for young people to advocate for animal welfare. And the main project I'm going to be talking about is a campaign for the release of Shankar, an African elephant at the Delhi Zoo who has been kept in solitary confinement for 16 years. So we all vividly remember the feeling of being confined in our homes during the pandemic. We felt pain, isolation, anger at our lack of freedom. And while I was feeling this myself, I had a realization that captive animals, they go through this for their entire lives. And it's not even for their safety like it was for us, but for humans' entertainment. So that was one of the moments which inspired me to go beyond and explore the darker, more twisted truth of animal treatment in India. So during my internship with World Animal Protection India, I researched and wrote articles about the ill treatment of elephants in India. And for context, elephants are significant cultural symbols of India. As Dr. Manuri mentioned in her talk, they're viewed as symbols of power and have a long cultural history. So I was surprised to come across a process called the crush to break the elephant spirit, where they're chained and constantly beaten for 72 hours. And we continue to sugarcoat our supposed adoration and respect for elephants in India, yet it is ironic that our words do not reflect our actions. So I became immersed in the subject of treatment of captive elephants, from zoos to festivals to private ownership. And along the way, I was fascinated by how cognitively complex and similar elephants are to humans, which has been previously discussed in the panel. They're sentient beings who feel just like us. For example, elephants grieve the death of a close one, just like we do. They're like us, incredible social animals who travel in herds and have complex social structures, bonding with each other to form lifelong friendships. And not only are they socially aware, but also highly intelligent. For example, Happy, a captive elephant in the Bronx Zoo in New York, was able to recognize herself in the mirror, which is a clear sign of self-awareness. And because of the complexity, elephants require constant intellectual stimulation and enrichment, something that is restricted in a zoo. Research shows that as a result of captivity, the elephant's brain becomes neurologically less complex and communicative. And a primary sign of this damage is in stereotypical or repetitive behavior like swaying or head bobbing. And there's enough evidence to show that an elephant's physical health is also negatively impacted in captivity. So this research gave me the confidence to speak about this topic. And I had come across a 2009 Indian zoo regulation that banned the exhibition of elephants in zoos. And given that we have so many elephants in zoos, something was obviously wrong. And at first I thought this legislation had been revoked, but no, it had just been overlooked and brushed under the carpet of some government stakeholder meeting. So we found a clear violation of law and went after it. And when I visited the Delhi Zoo and saw Shankar's solitary state, my heart broke. And I just want to show a video of Shankar's condition. So he showed clear signs of distress and loneliness. In fact, people around me, they applauded as they mistook his stereotypical behavior for, dancing out of happiness. So there isn't enough public knowledge in India about elephants. They're viewed as domestic animals like cattle and pets. So I saw a clear disconnect between the public's perception of, him being happy and his actual distress. And it reminded me of why I became invested in animals in the first place, to reveal the truth behind the idolized treatment of elephants in India. So our first goal was to gain public support and raise awareness. So we started an online petition, and we have so far gained 200,000 signatures as mentioned. But simply having numbers on a petition is not enough to show support, and we wanted to emotionally involve the community. For example, we launched an art campaign, #ArtForShankar, where kids from age to 5 to 10, they drew their interpretation of Shankar's confinement. And we also had a Diwali campaign where kids lit a diya for Shankar. So it was just small projects like these that made a big difference in raising awareness for him. And while public support is critical, so is tangible action. So we look to draft a public interest litigation to file in the Delhi High Court. And we firstly sent scientific and legal letters to the Environmental Ministry, Indian Prime Minister, asking for Shankar's release. And we also found that the zoo was violating a regulation that an elephant cannot be kept solitary for over 6 months. And Shankar has been companionless for 16 years. So clear violation. And in addition, we needed a place where Shankar would go. Given that Shankar is an adult bull African elephant, finding a rehabilitation option was a huge challenge. But we finally received support from Aspinall Foundation, a British charity, who are not only willing to facilitate the translocation of Shankar to a sanctuary in Africa, but also pay for all the expenses. So we're very grateful for their support. And just as an update, we have had a court hearing in June where the court was open to inspecting Shankar's condition and ordered a physical examination of Shankar by the zoo authorities. And however, from what we've received, we aren't satisfied with the report the zoo has provided, since firstly, it was merely a visual inspection, which doesn't give complete insight into an elephant's physical and mental health. And secondly, one of the report's recommendations is that the zoo is considering importing more female African elephants from Africa for Shunker's companionship. And we don't believe this is an effective solution nor an ethical one. Mate selection for elephants is more complex than putting two elephants together in the same enclosure. And if one dies, then we're stuck in the same situation. More importantly, the goal is to stop the importation of elephants in our zoo for entertainment rather than harming one more life. So the main lesson I think I've learned through this journey is that advocacy, it starts with small steps and creates a ripple effect for others. We started small and local with one elephant. However, we don't believe this case is not just about Shunker's freedom, but we hope it opens the door for all captive elephants in India, from the zoo to temple elephants. It's difficult to tackle elephant captivity in India, I think, given their cultural importance. For example, their use in religious festivals in Kerala. So it can be a taboo topic. And the problem of captivity is not restricted to India. I've had the privilege of interviewing other activists like Mark Stratton behind the Free Bunka campaign in Armenia and Diana Valenciana for Eli, an elephant in New Mexico. So it is a global challenge that needs collective work. And one important point I wanted to bring up is how we need to change how we educate ourselves about animal welfare. I've noticed in schools, we learn to perceive animals as an obligatory chapter in just a lengthy book about ecology. Firstly, from a scientific perspective, we need to realize that animals are cohabitants of our planet and learn the key roles they play in preserving our own sustainability and ecosystem services. But more than that, I think schools would benefit from analyzing how we ethically treat animals. By restricting our moral circle to humans, we exclude animals from basic rights such as that of freedom. So by challenging this anthropocentric or human-centered mindset, this would encourage the youth to become more compassionate and aware about animals. And this would also equip people with the knowledge and confidence to say no to bathing and riding the elephants, attending animal circuses and zoos, as Muriel mentioned in her panel discussion, since the demand from the public is what ultimately fuels animal captivity and entertainment. And finally, I just like to close by thanking Youth for Animals, all the volunteers and the animal welfare organizations for all their selfless help and support in the campaign. The youth has the power and the voice to make a change in the world. It just takes one person to take the first step. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikita. And as I said, it's ended with hope. And thank you so much for taking this action, make the change when you are such a young age, and to voice for animals. I hope Heidi is with us. Yes, yes, it's very nerve-wracking for you. Okay, so I'm going to hand over you to for the panel discussion now. Thank you.
Okay, great. And we'll hope my connection stays up. Since we're a little bit short on time, we do have, though, a few questions. And so I'll give each one of you, the presenters from this session, a question. The first question, which is from the audience, is for Steve. Why is it that elephant keepers' owners are so far removed from meeting the elephant's requirements? A common blind spot to traditional Asian elephant keepers and Western zookeepers. Is there a knowledge gap in the wild behavior and requirements of these animals, marine mammals, primates included?
Good question, but you guys hear me okay? Yeah? Yes. It's not about the elephants or any of the animals, it's about money, yeah? So these animals are used to make money. And if you're not compassionate about the animal, then why do you care about it, in a sense? Yeah, so it's about money. Yes, there is a lack of knowledge, but the knowledge is available if they would like to receive it. I continually go around and offer things for free. I don't ask anything in return. I just go and try to help in any way that I can. And if you're using those animals to make money, the elephant in particular, their needs, their wants, their requirements aren't important to them. So it really comes down to a lot of times teaching compassion. How do you teach compassion? How do you make people care about something else? I guess.
Thank you. And actually, there's another question that I'll address to you. In Taiwan, our zoo has a captive elephant and the ground is concrete. If the zoo lacks foot care, is there the possibility that there's the same damage as the temple elephant that you discussed? And how can they try to find out if their elephant has any foot damage?
Well, I mean, I have to see the feet, obviously, but yeah, if an elephant's kept in an improper environment, particularly concrete or any unyielding surface, you know, these elephants, they walk on their toes. And this is a whole another topic to talk about, but elephants walk on their toes, and so taking care of their feet is very important, and making sure that they're on soft, yielding surfaces where they can dig and dust and do things that they would normally do. Concrete is not that. And so I'm sure there's damage done, and I'm sure it's probably similar, but it depends on what the elephant does during its day. It depends on its behavior. Does it sway? Does it rock? But I'll be happy if we can get in contact with that person to help. They can send me, I'll be happy to help in any way that I can.
Great, thank you very much. The next question is for Rob, and there was a question about, oops, let's see if I can find it. What is the biggest issue when swimming with dolphins?
That's a challenging one to answer because there are many issues and you can take your pick out of all of them as to which one you feel is the most important. So maybe what I should do is just tell you a bunch of things, give you a laundry list of some of the problems encountered in Swim with the Dolphin programs, and people can decide which one is the biggest. So you have lack of space. Most of these animals are in shallow coastal pens or pools. They're generally in barren conditions. They have an inability to express most of their natural movements and behaviors. They're nearly almost always in abnormal, arbitrary social environments, so unrelated animals. They are often overworked because they're used for swim wits as customers come, and that can lead to chronic stress. They face potential zoonotic disease transfer from humans to them. Many of the Swim with the Dolphin programs use wild caught animals. So they're extracted, from their normal environments, their intact wild environments and social environments to make somebody money. A lot of the places where these things have surfaced in Oceania and in the Caribbean and other parts of the world lack any form of real regulation. So that means there's a lot of abuse and poor care. And a lot of them also operate what's called dolphin-assisted therapy, or DAT, where they bring their child with Down syndrome or who has autism in the hope that swimming with the dolphin, which they pay a lot of money for, is going to somehow help their child. And in fact, I did an event a number of years ago with Betsy Smith, the founder of Dolphin Assisted Therapy, and she said it's completely complete nonsense. She thought it was good at first, but she changed her mind and said, what you accomplish with a dolphin, you could accomplish with a dog or a cat or a guinea pig. So these programs can also be very predatory on people who are wanting to help their children. And then just one final point that comes to mind is they're often dangerous to the participants. There have been cases of dolphins who are, 500-600 pound animals that are very powerful, or they can be larger. And they've attacked people, bitten people, slammed people, causing broken ribs and things like that. So I would say to people, take your pick. There are a lot of problems associated with them. They shouldn't be allowed. Period.
Thank you very much. A very comprehensive response. David, I would like to ask you one of the next questions that was put up, and that was whether you could provide any advice about parrot shows and what would be the major welfare issues of parrots in captivity and their use in entertainment.
Well, I have no expertise in parrot shows, but I think what Rob just said about dolphins and what we've been talking about with elephants probably applies. They're very social. They don't have their normal space. They don't have their normal family environment. Everything that they value in life is taken away, and they're asked to associate with people, and it's not right. It's not fair. I think it applies to almost every animal in captivity. Some are more intelligent than others, and parrots certainly are highly intelligent. And the more intelligent, I think, the greater the suffering.
Great, thank you. Nikita, there's a question actually from Laurent, and that is to know, how is awareness developing among the youth in India? Awareness about animal issues, obviously wildlife issues, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that there has definitely been progress as there's been more emphasis on it using social media. However, in usually metro areas and larger cities, I think there's still a lot that needs to be worked into it. For example, wildlife tourism is very important. A lot of people my age don't understand, the harm of riding an elephant or just, bathing the elephant, because it's, portrayed as something like, oh, you're interacting with nature, this is positive. But in reality, I think that's where education comes in on how we just develop our knowledge about the role of animals, and more importantly, compassion about animals at a young age, I think, is what is missing from just education curriculums. And I'm just thinking of ways that, the youth can involve themselves in animal advocacy. I think one way is to, there are many NGOs with youth ambassador programs like Born Free, and you can do letter writing campaigns to zoo associations like WAZA to just maybe, I don't know, for example, encourage the phasing out of elephants in zoos or any animals. So that's also a good way to get involved. And again, saying no to elephant rides and, those selfish selfies, and just seeing animals as props rather than actual cohabitants of our planet. I think that would actually just make it a lot of difference, even if it's from one person.
Great, thank you very much. I'm sorry that we are gonna have to close because we're a little bit short on time now, but I appreciate all of your input and presentations. I think it's extremely useful to get the information out there to the public and to kind of, share knowledge about captive wildlife, and in particular, their use in entertainment and what the whole background is in that regard. So thank you very much again for participating, everyone.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you so much for all speakers and participants today. And I'm really pleased that we have many Chinese colleagues, and my Chinese friends are staying with us up to now. And I think a lot to take away. And I want to thank again to Laurent and Heidi and the support of IUCN Species Survival Commission to support us for this webinar. We will upload the recording online so people can share it or rewatch it. And Laurent will have his magazine dedicated, one of the issues dedicated to this webinar as well. And I think we want to share with you the recording will be broadcast again nationwide in China. If the speakers want to be contacted, please do feel free to leave in the chat box about your contact details so people can get in touch. And also my colleagues will share with you with one of the video actually I found in China is they are independent filmmakers is making this program about the truths behind animals in entertainment in China, and it's very interesting to see how travel circus is getting more in China, and hopefully this is encouraging in a way is the independent filmmaker, they are making this issue to be more aware by the public. So I think with Natika's ending with, they are hope, as what follow the speakers and Will and Rob both have, mentioned we can do something started by ourselves in every level from, Steve go to work, from traveler to treat this animal. David, you are become the trial lawyer to help the animal. ACTAsia working on education, IUCN give us scientific support. All these, we are all making the world together a better place and a more compassionate world for next generations. Thank you so much for everyone today. And, you know, I hope you will tune in when we have next webinar. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.